My name is Cedric Johnson. I teach pastoral theology and congregational care at Wesley Seminary. It's a pleasure to be here on this evening when Dr. Smith invited me to participate. I hadn't read the book as of yet. And after I read the book, I was like, okay, what's going on here? Why do I find myself in this space? And I raised that question because I find myself in the company of the journeymen in the journey system. I'm a native New Yorker. Born and raised in New York, born and raised in a church in New York City. Saw that church dwindle down. That's the slow death that we've been alluding to and that Pastor Rudy spoke about in his book. And being one who has an insurgent spirit as well, said to myself, well, maybe after we get down to 100 people, they'll see the need to change. No change. Right? And maybe when we get down to 75 people, the light bulb will come on and we'll see the need to change. No change. Okay, maybe when we get down to 50 people, I feel like, that Old Testament narrative, right? Maybe we get down to 50 people. They'll see the need to change. At some point around 50, I heard the call of the Spirit calling me to the margins, and I left that church. That church is still functioning within those four walls. I understand that it possibly has dwindled below 50. And it wasn't until a comment from a colleague of mine that I came to understand what was going on. This colleague of mine shared when a body dies. Because in fact, what my colleague shared with me may indicate that the circumstance is more dire than we actually realize. When a corpse dies, right, and it begins to decay, right, what's the last thing left? The bones. Now, the corpse is dead. It's been dead a period of time, but the last system to decay is the skeletal system, and it takes years for a body that's already dead. The body is already dead. It's been dead. But that skeletal system, that last remaining infrastructure, right? That last small still is there, and it takes, the body's been dead. And I said, I caught the wisdom of that. It may not be an issue of slow death. It may be that the body is in fact already dead. And what we see inside of many of these four walls is just the skeletal system of a body that's already dead. Selah. Most of the students that are here with us tonight know me as a professor at the seminary. Most of them, some of them know that I also in a previous life was a professional musician. So your section on the end of the book on the importance of creativity and the creative community resonated with me. That your co-author, I think, noted on in that last chapter. But I don't think many of the students know that as a result of my own call to insurgency I planted an insurgent church in Brooklyn about a year and a half ago. For the very reasons that you noted in your book, my father. So I can speak freely because I'm not United Methodist. That particular denomination, for those of you who don't know, will remain unspoken for the few minutes that I am here, but the parallels to me are clear. The institutional church is dead or dying. And reading Pastor Rudy's book, much of it resonated with me, much of it encouraged me as a fellow sojourner. You referenced Martin Luther King quite a bit in the book. And I really see this as the beginning of a conversation, really. And what I liked about, and what I think you all implied in the book, that I think we're going to need to unpack more going forward. You referenced MLK, and you made me think about the risk of leadership of being an insurgent, and you rightly referenced MLK as an insurgent. But my mind always goes to the late MLK, right? In his latter thing, right? When he makes the movement that he got tremendous resistance to, right? When he makes the movement from civil rights black people, and he connects the civil rights movement focused on race, and he connects it to this larger global movement connected to the poor globally, right? And actually, King became dangerous because it expanded beyond a civil rights movement narrowly defined to race, and he brought this plethora, right, where you had Jews, poor whites. Then he really got in trouble when he understood the connection between the plight of black people in America, and he connected it to the plight and began to criticize the war. Wow. Right? That's when his insurgency really got the attention of the hegemonic structure we call. Well, I've already come to terms with the fact that I have a file, and as you're going to listen. As Brother Rudy mentioned in his book, if you're going to walk in this path, you've got to come to terms with certain things, right? So I've come to terms with the file, all right? But I like that in your book, you particularly with your co-author, the juxtaposition of what she shares and what you share, begin to make the connections as it relates to the challenges of the church in this global context, right? Because I was asking, what can I kind of add? And actually I need to cut my comments short because I really want our guests to get some more time in front of me. But I think most churches and pastors do not recognize the moment that we live in, this global context that we live in, and they don't understand the implications of this global context for what it means for urban ministry on the ground in your particular parish, right? I'll just throw one thing out and move out of the way so we can have some further conversation. The boundaries have diminished. Denominational boundaries are not what they used to be, right? We see that in Pastor Dye's testimony, right? Raised United Methodist, raised Lutheran rather, right? And then husband, Assemblies of God, and then they shifted to Methodist as a kind of way to meld those two traditions, right? That's just one example of the fact that national boundaries have erased, religious boundaries are erasing. Some would say we live in a post-Christian era. Christendom definitely is bygone. So we are in this context now where your Christian beliefs have to stand up to all of the other spiritual discourses that are out there now. Right. And your churches have to equip you in such a way that you can clearly articulate your faith in this multi-religious, multicultural world. Right? So I've seen too many churches pour old wine into new wineskins. Where we got the screens up, and we got the contemporary worship and praise, and we got all the traffic. But the theology is still the same. It's old wine and new wineskins. When we really, I think what is being pointed to in that book is a total reorientation of our Christian witness in this globalized world. Right? And I think you point to that in your book, right? And the thing that I would like to see us do going forward in this conversation is unpacking that some more, right? Really helping pastors and leaders understand the things that you point to that characterize this present context and help them to understand the implications for ministry on the ground in light of this new context. Because it's shifted. We are not in the same hysterical moment as our parents that came up in the civil rights movement. It's a different context, right? With different dynamics in place, which have implications for how we do ministry today. I was like, what can how many of you read Cornell West's Democracy Matters? So I kind of thought, like, what can I just kind of bring as resources to? So I would highly recommend Cornell West's Democracy Matters. That's the most accessible book of the ones I would suggest to help you better understand this context within which we all minister today. And maybe I'll throw one more out to you, and then I'm going to move because I want us to be able to talk to our guests, both of our guests, some more. Mark Taylor's The Executed God. Eleanor, if you give a thumbs up on that. Some of you have been studying the new Jim Crow. I would encourage you to put this text in conversation with that book because it nuances the prison-industrial complex to another level. Mark Taylor, if you have any interest as it relates to the prison-industrial complex, you have to read this book in conjunction with the new Jim Crow. Mark Lewis Taylor, what other goodies did I bring for you before I move? Globalization, in search of the good life. Rebecca Todd Peters, The Ethics of Globalization. You have to understand the processes that we call, or that have been called, globalization to minister effectively today. And do I have, let's see, do we have any other, maybe one more goodie, and then I'm going to move. That's the only reason I brought it in my bag, because I wanted to, it's like, what resources could I share with the people? This one is a little bit more academic, but there's some good stuff in here if you can kind of wade your way through it. It's going to take some time getting through it now, right? Because it's a little bit more hefty. It's an academic, but it's entitled Reconstructing Practical Theology, right? And the subtitle is The Impact of Globalization. The author's name is John Reeder, R-E-A-D-E-R. Reconstructing Practical Theology. Like again, it's a little denser, but pick it up, try and work through it slowly. He really speaks to some of the implications for pastoral ministry in this context. But it's a little denser, but I still recommend it because its implications for pastoral ministry are very pertinent. That's just what I wanted to throw out for now. I really want to get our guests back up. I'm the home crowd, so we can have our conversation anytime. Thank you very much.